Rain slammed against the sidewalks of downtown Nashville, the kind of steady autumn storm that soaks through a coat in seconds and makes the morning commute feel like a battle. At the corner of Pine and Rosewood, the Sunrise food truck glowed faintly against the gray, its yellow and orange paint streaked with water, steam rising from the griddle inside. People lined up beneath umbrellas, stamping their feet against the chill. They were regulars, construction workers, nurses coming off night shift, a retired Navy man with a weathered cane and a patient dog at his heel. They wanted coffee, eggs, a hot breakfast to brace them for the day. Then the SUVs rolled in. Black, sleek, and loud. They cut through puddles and screeched to a stop by the curb. The noise made the dog growl low in his throat. Doors flew open. Reporters spilled out like a tide, microphones raised, cameras flashing. The crowd in line scattered, startled. Natalie Queen stepped back from the griddle with a cup of steaming coffee in hand, her sunflower print apron damp with rain. She looked up just as the first camera flash seared her eyes. The coffee slipped, hit the ground, and splashed across her sneakers. "Mr. Walker." A man's voice boomed over the thunder and rain. "Is it true you've been living a double life to charm a girl from a food truck?" Natalie blinked, her heart hammering, every muscle frozen. The reporters pressed closer, their umbrellas knocking against each other, voices overlapping. "Are you hiding here from your board? Did you lie to her about your name, your fortune?" Another flash. Another question. And then Caleb Walker stepped forward. He wasn't in his boardroom armor today. His navy coat was soaked, collar turned up against the rain, his dark hair plastered to his forehead. Yet even drenched, there was no mistaking the aura of control about him. He lifted an arm, placing himself squarely between Natalie and the advancing reporters. His voice cut through the chaos, calm but edged. "Enough. This is private property. Back away." The dog barked once, sharp, then growled at a camera hidden half in a trash can. Natalie's breath caught in her throat. She looked at Caleb, at the man who had been ordering black coffee every morning for weeks. The man who laughed awkwardly at her jokes, who stayed to help close up when the rain came, who listened when she told him about her brother. His jaw was set, his eyes steady. But there was something else beneath the surface. Something like guilt. She whispered. Not to the reporters. Not to the crowd. But only to him. "If you're really Caleb Walker, then what were all those nights in my kitchen worth?" The words felt torn from her chest. The rain battered down, drowning out the buzz of microphones. Caleb turned toward her, lips parted. His gaze flickered something raw, something unguarded. He opened his mouth to speak, but the shouting swallowed the moment. "Are you ashamed of her, Mr. Walker? Is this all just a publicity stunt?" Natalie barely heard them. Inside her head, the question kept pulsing like the storm itself. Who had she let into her life? Her grip on the counter trembled. Her chest ached with betrayal she hadn't yet named. Caleb reached for her shoulder, rain dripping from his cuff. And in that instant she thought, say something true. Say it, before the cameras take the chance away. But the words didn't come. They hung in the air like thunder waiting to break. Natalie's mind reeled. She saw again his hesitation at the menu, the slip of his driver calling him Mr. Walker. The tone that crept into his voice whenever his phone buzzed. Pieces falling into place, forming a picture she had refused to see. Her pulse roared in her ears. Behind her, the griddle hissed and sputtered, the smell of bacon and coffee mixing with the metallic tang of rain. Around them, the city moved on, buses groaning, horns blaring. But here, at the corner of Pine and Rosewood, the world had narrowed to a question and a silence. Caleb shifted closer, as if the answer was on the edge of his tongue. Natalie's eyes burned, not with rain but with something heavier. She could feel every camera fixed on them, every lens hungry for her reaction. She wanted to scream, to demand the truth, to shove him away. Instead, her voice slipped out again, softer this time, almost broken. "Who are you, really?" Caleb blinked, rain dripping down his lashes, and for once the practiced composure cracked. His lips moved, but before the sound reached her, the reporters surged forward, microphones thrust between them like spears. Natalie flinched back, the dog barking furiously now. Mr. Hargrove trying to push the crowd away with his cane. Caleb's arm stayed firm in front of her, shielding her from the storm of questions. And still, he hadn't answered. The silence screamed louder than the rain, louder than the cameras, louder than her racing heart. Inside, Natalie's thoughts whispered with a pain she couldn't yet voice. If everything was a lie, then what was I holding on to? The storm raged on, waiting for the truth to break. The roar of voices and rain from that morning refused to leave Natalie's ears. Even hours later, After the reporters had scattered and the sunrise truck stood closed and silent, the memory pulsed inside her chest. She sat at the tiny kitchen table in her apartment 2 blocks away. Shoes still damp from the storm. Hands wrapped around a mug she hadn't touched. Her brother Lucas was in his room humming along to the rhythm of a video game, his calm voice counting numbers under his breath. She envied his focus. She wanted to climb into that rhythm and disappear, but instead she stared at the blank wall, the echoes of Caleb's silence circling. Who was he, really? Why had she never demanded an answer before? That night, when sleep finally came, it came in fragments. A dream, or maybe a memory, replayed with aching clarity. She was small again, no more than 10. Sitting on the steps of a shelter in Knoxville. It was winter. Her hands were numb, her jacket thin. Inside, voices murmured, people lined up for hot meals. She had a sandwich her mother had packed, peanut butter smudged unevenly between 2 slices of bread. She noticed the boy sitting alone at the bottom of the steps. His face was dirty, his eyes hollow in a way no child should be. He didn't ask, didn't beg. He just sat there, fists clenched against his knees. Something had tugged at her chest then, the same way it tugged at her now. She had sat beside him, tore the sandwich in half, and handed it over. He looked at her as if she had given him something more than bread. Before leaving, she had pulled a napkin from the dispenser inside, and scribbled the first thing that came to mind with a borrowed pen. Don't forget, you have a future. She hadn't thought about that boy in years. But in the storm outside her truck, when Caleb turned toward her with that flicker of recognition, something inside her had stirred. Could it be? She shook her head. Coincidence, surely. Still, she rose and went to the closet where a metal box sat on the top shelf, dented and scratched from years of moves. She pulled it down, sat cross-legged on the carpet, and opened it. Inside were fragments of a younger life. Old ticket stubs, a bracelet with missing beads, faded photographs, and at the very bottom, a napkin folded into quarters. The ink had blurred with time, but the words were still legible. Don't forget, you have a future. Her own handwriting, childish loops and all. Her throat tightened. She closed the box quickly, pressing her hands to the cool metal. If Caleb Walker was that boy, then the lie wasn't just about his name or his money. It was about a bond she hadn't even realized was still alive. The next morning, she forced herself back to the truck. The rain had passed, leaving the streets slick and shining. Customers returned slowly. Cautious, after the chaos. Mr. Hargrove came first, leaning on his cane, Buddy trotting beside him. He ordered the usual egg wrap, no cheese, extra salsa, and Natalie managed a small smile as she handed it over. He looked at her for a long moment before saying softly, "Storms don't last, young lady. The sky clears." She nodded, though the weight in her chest stayed. A few more regulars came, offering quiet support. No one asked about the reporters. No one mentioned Caleb. It was as if the neighborhood had silently decided to give her space. By the third morning, he was back. He didn't arrive in a sleek car, no entourage, no suit. Just jeans, a worn navy jacket, hair still damp from a hurried shower. He waited in line like everyone else, hands in his pockets. When he reached the window, she had already poured a black coffee, set it on the counter without meeting his eyes. "Thank you," he said, his voice careful. She didn't answer. He lingered. "Do you still remember what people like?" She froze. Her eyes lifted, met his. "That's my job," she said flatly. "No," he replied softer. "Not everyone does it the way you do." Silence stretched between them. She looked away first, sliding the cup toward him. "It's just coffee." He accepted it, fingers brushing hers for the briefest second, warmth sparking like an old echo. Then the next customer stepped up, and the moment was gone. That night, Caleb sat in his high-rise apartment overlooking the city. Lights glittered below, but he felt none of it. He opened the small tin box he had carried with him through foster homes, dorm rooms, and offices. Inside was a napkin, edges frayed, words fading but still visible. "Don't forget, you have a future." He held it carefully, almost reverently, remembering the day it had been given. He had been 10. Abandoned and angry. Convinced he was invisible. Until a girl with a sandwich had sat beside him, not asking questions, not judging, just sharing what little she had. That napkin had followed him into every boardroom, every late-night negotiation, every victory and failure. It had been the reminder that maybe, just maybe, he mattered. And now, seeing her again, realizing she was the same girl, he felt the weight of every choice he had made since. He had hidden his identity not out of malice, but out of fear. Fear that if she knew who he had become, she would see only the mask. Not the boy she once saved. But lies, even unspoken ones, had a way of festering. Across town, Natalie sat in her small apartment, Lucas humming softly beside her as he lined up his favorite toy cars in perfect order. She brushed a hand over his hair, her mind far away. She had lived her life fighting for scraps of dignity, refusing pity, building something real with her own hands. Sunrise wasn't just a food truck, it was her survival, her sanctuary, her promise to Lucas that they could make a life on their own terms. And now this man, this billionaire, had walked into her world with secrets and silence. She didn't know whether to hate him or to hope. Outside, the city moved with its usual rhythm, honking horns, guitar strings from street performers, the scent of barbecue drifting from a corner stand. But inside both their hearts, the same question lingered. Could a single moment, a shared sandwich, a scribbled napkin, truly bind two lives forever? Neither of them had the answer yet. The storm had passed, but the air was still heavy, charged with everything unsaid, everything waiting to be revealed. And both knew. The past had come back, whether they were ready or not. By the fourth morning after the storm, the crowd at Sunrise was back to its familiar rhythm. The hiss of bacon on the griddle, the aroma of coffee drifting into the street, the shuffle of boots on wet pavement. It was the comfort people craved before heading into their own battles. Natalie worked with practiced ease, apron tied tight, her blonde hair twisted into a bun. To the customers, nothing seemed changed, but inside her, every breath felt heavier. Every time she glanced up and saw Caleb in line, waiting quietly with hands in his pockets, her chest tightened. He never pushed, never demanded. He just showed up, and somehow that was worse than if he had begged. The neighborhood had begun to notice. Rosa, the florist across the street, leaned against the counter one morning and lowered her voice. "That man's trouble, Nat. Men with secrets always are." Natalie nodded politely, but she didn't answer. Across the lot, Buddy barked suddenly, hackles raised, startling a cluster of customers. The dog lunged toward a trash bin, pulling his leash from Mr. Hargrove's hand. Natalie rushed over just in time to see Buddy clawing at a small black device half hidden under a soda can. Mr. Hargrove bent stiffly, picked it up, and frowned. "Looks like a camera," he muttered. "A reporter's tool." Natalie's stomach dropped. Someone had planted surveillance outside her truck. Caleb appeared at her side, his expression darkening. "Let me handle this." But Natalie yanked the device from his hand. "Handle it how, Caleb? With more lies?" He winced, the words cutting deep. But before he could answer, Lucas stepped out of the truck. He hated crowds, usually stayed in the back with his headphones, but something had drawn him out. He looked from his sister to Caleb, then down at the strange device. "It's bugged," he said softly, surprising them both. "Not just a camera, there's audio too." Natalie's heart clenched. Her little brother didn't speak much, but when he did, he was usually right. She knelt, her hands trembling as she pocketed the device. "Go back inside, Lou." Lucas obeyed, but not before glancing at Caleb with eyes sharp beyond his years. Caleb lingered, silent, his gaze fixed on Natalie as if searching for a way to reach her. That night, the unease stayed with her. She locked up the truck, walked home with Lucas trailing beside her, and noticed the SUV again, dark windows, idling too long at the corner. Her skin prickled. She hurried Lucas inside, her pulse thudding. The next morning, Caleb wasn't in line. Instead, a tall woman in a tailored coat appeared, her smile polished, her voice smooth as silk. "Natalie Queen?" she asked, as though addressing an interview. "I'm Marissa Holt. Public Relations for Walker Innovations." Natalie's hand froze on the coffee pot. "What do you want?" Marissa's smile didn't falter. "To keep things simple. Mr. Walker is a man of stature, and the board is concerned about appearances. It would be best for all involved if you kept your story private. No more cameras. No more attention. We'll ensure you're compensated." She slid a card across the counter as though sliding a bribe across a poker table. Natalie's jaw tightened. "So that's how it works? By silence?" Marissa's eyes cooled. "Sometimes silence is safer." She turned on her heel and left, her heels clicking against the pavement. The card sat on the counter like poison. Caleb arrived a few minutes later, breathless, clearly having followed her. He saw the card and swore under his breath. "She had no right." "She works for you," Natalie shot back. "That means you sent her, whether you admit it or not." Caleb's shoulders sagged. "I didn't. But she thinks she's protecting the company. He stopped. Words caught. She folded her arms. Protecting your image, you mean? Protecting the lie. Customers were watching, so she forced her voice calm. Take your coffee, Caleb. And go. He obeyed. But his eyes stayed on her until the last possible second, as if begging her to see something beyond the surface. Days passed. The neighborhood whispered. Some pitied her. Some urged her to cash in on the attention. But most simply carried on, their loyalty steady. Natalie clung to that normalcy like a lifeline. Yet the SUV kept appearing. Buddy barked every time. Lucas grew more withdrawn, retreating into his headphones. And Natalie felt the walls closing in. One evening, as she scrubbed down the griddle, Caleb appeared outside. No line, no customers, just him standing in the twilight. Let me in, he said quietly. We need to talk. Against her better judgment, she opened the door. He stepped inside, dripping from another sudden Nashville downpour. The small space felt tighter with him there. She crossed her arms, waiting. He pulled something from his jacket, a battered tin box. He opened it, revealing the napkin, edges worn, words faded. Don't forget, you have a future. Her breath caught. Her knees weakened. It was the same as the one hidden in her own box at home. For a long moment, neither spoke. Rain pattered on the metal roof. The smell of onions and bread still lingered in the air. Finally, Caleb's voice broke the silence, raw and unpolished. That was you, wasn't it? At the shelter. You were the girl who saved me when I thought no one ever would. Her throat closed. She wanted to deny it. To shut the box. To keep the memory locked away where it couldn't hurt her. But the words slipped out anyway. And you were the boy who looked like the world had forgotten him. He stepped closer, desperation in his eyes. I didn't tell you because I was afraid. Afraid you'd stop looking at me like I mattered. Afraid you'd only see the headlines, not the boy with nothing. She shook her head, tears blurring her vision. You should have trusted me with the truth. Buddy barked suddenly outside, pulling them both from the moment. Natalie moved to the window, saw the SUV again, closer this time, headlights glaring through the rain. A silhouette shifted inside. The storm outside was nothing compared to the one churning in her chest. Lies, surveillance, threats, it was all closing in, and the truth was no longer a whisper from the past. It was pounding at the door, demanding to be answered. The storm rolled back into Nashville as though the sky itself had been waiting for the right moment to break. Rain hammered against the roof of the Sunrise food truck, lightning lit the streets in quick flashes, and Natalie felt her chest tighten with every drop. The SUV that had been haunting the corner for days now pulled up close, its tinted windows reflecting the neon sign above her truck. Buddy barked furiously, straining at his leash until Mr. Hargrove cursed and tried to calm him. Lucas peeked out from the side window, fear flickering across his face, his headphones hanging loosely around his neck. Natalie's pulse quickened when the doors of the SUV swung open and the crowd poured out, not quiet men in suits but reporters, cameras raised, microphones jabbing like weapons. The rain bounced off their umbrellas, their voices cutting through the storm. Caleb Walker. Is it true you've been hiding here? Are you lying to this woman? Flashes went off like lightning. Natalie froze behind the counter, her hands gripping the edge of the griddle until her knuckles whitened. Caleb stepped in front of her without hesitation, water soaking his jacket, his dark hair plastered to his forehead. Back up, he barked, his voice firm, but the reporters surged closer. One microphone shoved toward Natalie, and the words struck her like a slap. Miss Queen, how does it feel to be tricked by the most eligible billionaire in Tennessee? The world tilted. Trick. The word echoed inside her skull. Caleb turned, panic in his eyes, but she saw only betrayal. Every morning coffee, every quiet laugh, every moment of warmth felt like a staged play now. A performance built on secrets. The cameras pressed in. The voices demanded answers. Natalie's throat burned. You lied to me, she said, her voice trembling but sharp enough to cut through the storm. Caleb flinched, his hand reaching out, palm open, as if he could hold her with nothing but air. No, Nat. I never lied about what mattered. She shook her head, tears spilling, rain mixing with salt on her cheeks. You lied about everything. The griddle hissed behind her, the smell of burnt toast filling the tight space. She slammed the service window shut, the metal clanging loud enough to silence the crowd for half a second. Inside the truck, the air was thick and stifling. Lucas huddled against the back wall, his hands over his ears, rocking back and forth. She knelt, pulled him close, whispered, "It's okay, baby, I've got you." But her own voice shook, and Lucas knew it wasn't okay at all. Outside, Caleb faced the mob alone. Enough. He shouted again, but his voice cracked this time. The reporters didn't care. They hurled questions about double lives, about manipulation, about whether the billionaire had been slumming it for amusement. Buddy barked and snapped, forcing a few to step back, but the damage was already done. Video cameras captured everything: the flash of anguish on Natalie's face, the way Caleb's hand hovered uselessly in the rain, the sight of the food truck door slamming shut behind her. By nightfall, the footage was everywhere. Headlines screamed across phones and televisions. Billionaire CEO exposed in secret romance with food truck girl. Commentators debated whether Natalie had been complicit, whether Caleb had used her as a publicity stunt, whether the whole thing was a scheme. The neighborhood around Pine and Rosewood grew quieter. Some customers still came, loyal and kind. But others avoided the truck, wary of becoming background extras in a scandal. Natalie kept her head down, cooked, served, cleaned. But every action felt mechanical. Her sanctuary had been turned into a stage, and she hated every second of it. Lucas felt it too. He asked fewer questions, spent more time in his room, sometimes pressing the same napkin between his palms as though its texture grounded him. He didn't say much. But one night he whispered, "Don't sell Sunrise, Nat. It's ours." The words broke her heart because she had already considered it. Across town, Caleb's world was collapsing in a different way. The Walker Innovations Board called an emergency meeting, voices clipped and cold through the polished conference room speakers. "Your behavior has damaged our image," one director snapped. "You need to apologize immediately and publicly." Caleb sat stiffly, the napkin hidden in his jacket pocket, his jaw set. "I won't apologize for being human." "You will," another voice pressed. "Or you'll jeopardize our Zurich deal. Investors don't want a liability." The word stung. Liability. He had been called many things: visionary, genius, even ruthless, but never that. Still, he shook his head. If protecting our image means erasing the truth, then maybe the image isn't worth protecting. The board exchanged looks of disdain, but Caleb didn't care. For the first time, the empire he had built felt like a cage. That night he drove not to his penthouse, but back to the truck. It was closed. Shutters pulled down tight. But he stood in the rain anyway, staring at the painted sun rising on its side. He whispered as though she could hear him through the steel walls. "It wasn't a game. You saved me once, and I'm not going to lose you now." Inside her apartment, Natalie sat with her laptop open, cursor blinking over a classified ad draft. "Food truck for sale. Used. Good condition. Needs a little love." She hovered over the keyboard, her fingers trembling. Lucas slept curled on the couch, Buddy at his feet, both trusting her to keep them safe. She closed the laptop with a sharp snap. Not tonight. Not yet. But she knew one thing for certain. The life she had built was slipping away, crushed under secrets she hadn't asked for. Outside, thunder rolled again, and the storm pressed closer. The city was watching, the world was watching, and Natalie Queen had no idea if she could survive the weight of someone else's truth. The ballroom shimmered with crystal chandeliers and the low murmur of Nashville's business elite. Men in tailored suits adjusted their cufflinks. Women in sequined gowns clinked glasses of champagne, and the stage at the front bore the city's seal alongside a polished podium. Tonight was meant to celebrate innovation and leadership. But for Caleb Walker, it felt like a trial. He stood backstage, tie loosened, the weight of expectation pressing against his ribs. The board wanted him to deliver a speech about profits and growth, to reassure investors that the scandal had been exaggerated. They had even provided prepared remarks, printed neatly on heavy paper, bullet points about strategic direction and public confidence. Caleb glanced at the pages, then folded them in half. His fingers dug into the pocket of his jacket, finding the crumpled napkin he had carried since childhood. Its edges were worn, its ink faded, but the words still lived. "Don't forget, you have a future." He could hear the MC's voice booming across the hall. "Please welcome the CEO of Walker Innovations, Mr. Caleb Walker." Applause rose, polite and expectant. Caleb stepped out, the light hot against his face, the sea of eyes fixed on him. He gripped the podium, saw the printed speech waiting, and pushed it aside. "They asked me to speak about leadership tonight," he began, his voice steady but low. The audience quieted. "About vision, about success. But I can't talk about any of that, not honestly. Because the truth is, I've been a coward." A ripple of surprise passed through the crowd. Caleb swallowed hard. "I run a company that touches millions of lives. Yet I hid who I was from the one person whose opinion actually mattered. I pretended to be just another customer at a food truck. Because I was terrified she'd look at me and see only headlines and dollar signs. I wanted to be seen as a man, not a brand. And in hiding, I betrayed her trust. He pulled the napkin from his pocket and held it up. Gasps scattered across the room. When I was 10 years old, I was a boy in a shelter in Knoxville, abandoned and invisible. A girl sat next to me, tore her sandwich in half, and gave me hope when I had none. She scribbled these words on a napkin. "Don't forget, you have a future." I have carried it ever since. And that girl, by some miracle, crossed my path again years later. She runs a food truck on Pine and Rosewood. She doesn't care about my title. She cares about fairness, about dignity, about community. She is the bravest leader I have ever known. The room was hushed now, not a fork clinking, not a glass raised. Caleb's voice broke slightly as he went on. Her name is Natalie Queen. And I lied to her by omission. Not because I didn't love her, but because I loved her too much to risk losing the way she looked at me. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. But I'm here tonight, not to defend myself, not to protect a company, but to say one thing in front of every single one of you. Natalie, you saved my life once. I will spend the rest of mine trying to earn that gift. For a moment, silence swallowed everything. Then a chair scraped softly at the back of the hall. Natalie stood near the exit, her dress simple, her hair pulled back, eyes wide and wet. Rosa had dragged her there, insisting she couldn't hide forever. She had planned to leave the moment she saw Caleb take the stage, but the napkin froze her in place. Her chest ached as she watched him hold it up, his hand shaking just enough to make her believe every word. The MC stammered, trying to regain control. But the crowd's attention never wavered. Caleb took a deep breath and delivered one final blow to the life he had built. Effective immediately, Walker Innovations will fund a scholarship for children in Knoxville shelters, because no child should ever feel as invisible as I once did. And tomorrow morning, we'll file plans to expand the Sunrise food truck into 5 community-based kitchens across Tennessee. Natalie will hold 51% ownership. Because leadership isn't about power. It's about giving it away. The audience erupted, not with the rehearsed applause of business events, but with genuine clapping, scattered cheers, a few gasps of disbelief. Caleb stepped down from the podium, ignoring the frantic looks of his board members. He walked straight through the crowd, eyes locked only on Natalie. She didn't move, didn't blink. Buddy sat obediently at her side, tail thumping against the floor, as if sensing the gravity of the moment. Caleb stopped a few feet away, soaked in sweat under the lights, his heart pounding. "It was you," he said softly, voice carrying only to her. "It was always you." Natalie's throat tightened. She thought of Lucas, of long nights repairing the truck, of her mother's voice reminding her that food should make people feel safe. She thought of the SUV and the cameras and the humiliation. And she thought of a little boy on shelter steps, eyes hollow until she sat beside him. Her voice trembled when she finally spoke. "Why now?" Caleb's answer came without hesitation. "Because lies built walls between us. And I don't want walls. I want a home. And you're the only one who ever made me feel I had one." Tears stung her eyes, but before she could answer, the crowd surged with whispers, investors buzzing with outrage, reporters already raising phones. The world was still watching, but for once Natalie didn't care. She stepped closer, eyes locked with his, her hand brushing the napkin he still held. "If you want me to believe you," she whispered, "don't just say it. Show me." Caleb nodded, his face breaking with both relief and fear. "I will. Every day. For the rest of my life." Behind them, applause swelled again, louder this time, echoing off the ballroom walls. Natalie felt the sound wrap around her like a tide. The storm that had broken her world was still raging, but maybe, just maybe, she wasn't standing in it alone anymore. Morning light spilled over Nashville, soft gold against the wet pavement, the kind of light that makes a city feel reborn after too many nights of storms. The Sunrise food truck stood once again at its corner on Pine and Rosewood, its paint freshly polished, the scent of coffee drifting out into the cool air. But something had changed. On the back wall of the truck, framed beneath clear glass, hung a collection of napkins. Some had scribbled thank yous from customers, others carried drawings from children, one had a prayer scrawled in uneven handwriting. And at the very center, carefully pressed and preserved, sat the napkin from years ago. "Don't forget, you have a future." Natalie touched the frame gently before opening the service window for the day. Her apron was tied with the same firm knot her mother had once shown her, her hair pulled back, her chin lifted. She felt the weight of the last weeks in her bones, yet also a strange lightness, as though speaking truth aloud had freed something inside her. The first customer was Mr. Hargrove, cane tapping against the pavement, Buddy trotting loyally by his side. He ordered his usual, and as she handed him the warm wrap, he nodded at the wall. "That's a good reminder," he said. "We all need futures worth fighting for." Natalie smiled faintly. "That's the plan." The line grew steadily: nurses, delivery drivers, even a few strangers who had read about her and wanted to see the truck for themselves. Some whispered, some offered encouragement, a few snapped photos, but most just wanted breakfast. That was enough. Inside, Lucas hummed softly as he lined up muffins in perfect rows, his movements steady and calm. Every so often he glanced at the napkin wall, his lips twitching into the hint of a smile. He didn't need to say it, but Natalie knew he felt safe again. Late morning brought Caleb. No chauffeur, no entourage, just him in a rolled-up shirt, sleeves damp with dishwater. He had been helping unload boxes from the delivery van, laughing with the driver, carrying crates of eggs like any other worker. When he stepped up to the counter, he didn't push to the front. He waited his turn. "Black coffee," he said simply. The same way he had on his first day. Natalie poured it, slid it across the counter, met his eyes. For a moment, the noise of the crowd dulled. "Thank you," he said, softer now, stripped of all pretense. She held his gaze, then finally answered, "You're welcome." It wasn't forgiveness. Not fully. But it was a door left open. Across town, the corporate board was fuming, deals falling apart, investors debating whether to pull out. But Caleb had stopped caring about quarterly reports. He spent his mornings at the truck, his afternoons working with lawyers to set up the Knoxville scholarship, his evenings planning the Sunrise expansion with Natalie. He no longer spoke about controlling markets. He spoke about feeding people. One Saturday, Rosa from the flower shop organized a neighborhood gathering at the truck. People brought folding chairs, guitars, baskets of cornbread. Children chalked pictures on the sidewalk. When the sun dipped low, someone strummed, "Take Me Home, Country Roads." And the crowd joined in, voices rough but full of heart. Natalie stood by the truck door, watching Lucas dance clumsily with Buddy beside him, watching Caleb pass out cups of chili he had helped cook. Her chest swelled with something she hadn't felt in months: hope that wasn't fragile, but rooted. When the song ended, she stepped forward, lifted her voice so the neighbors could hear. "My mother always said food should make people feel safe. That's what Sunrise will always be. No matter how big we get, no matter what storms come, we'll stay true to that." Applause rippled through the street, not the polite claps of a gala but the steady, honest rhythm of people who believed her. Later that night, when the crowd had thinned and the street quieted, Caleb approached her by the napkin wall. His face was tired, but his eyes were steady. "You asked me to show you, not just say it," he said. "I will keep showing you, every day. Not as a CEO. Just as me." Natalie studied him, her fingers brushing the glass over the napkin. "Justice isn't always loud," she said softly. "Sometimes it's just remembering who we are and refusing to forget." He nodded. The words sinking deep. And for once he didn't try to add more. Silence was enough. They stood together, the hum of the city in the distance. Buddy curled at their feet. Lucas humming quietly from inside the truck. The world outside still gossiped, still speculated, but here, on this corner, under the glow of a painted sun, they had carved out a piece of truth that no storm could erase. As the night deepened, Natalie felt a calm resolve settle over her. The battles weren't over. There would be more scrutiny, more hard days, more choices that cut deep, but she was no longer standing alone. And when she glanced at Caleb, she saw not the billionaire, not the scandal, but the boy who had once needed half a sandwich and a promise for tomorrow. The boy who had become a man willing to risk everything for honesty. She took a slow breath, her heart steady, her voice almost a whisper. "We'll build something new. Together." Caleb smiled, the first unguarded smile in weeks, and for the first time Natalie believed it could be true. The wall of napkins glowed softly behind them, a testament not to wealth or power, but to kindness and survival, and the quiet, relentless justice of remembering where you came from.